Hey goddesses, thanks for stopping by at my channel. My name is Rachel Abbey and I make videos all about natural hair, adulting, law of attraction, yoni semen, yoni wellness and so much more. So if those are things that you are interested in, why not subscribe to my channel, and also follow me on Instagram as well, because I post a lot about my law of attraction journey and all the things that I'm doing to really try and embrace law of attraction principles and really up level my life and start creating and living the kind of life that I want on my Instagram page. So follow me on that if you're not following me there already. Now in today's video I wanted to do an adulting video. I was thinking about some of my life lessons and things that I would change if I could go back in time and kind of like relive my 20s. So one of the major, I guess what I want to say before I begin this video is that, you know, hindsight is the best thing. Like, a lot of us would go back in time and change so many decisions we made in the past now that we have hindsight, but unfortunately life isn't like that. We just have to live in the moment and hopefully make the best decisions we can possibly make with the information that we have at that time. So, you know, although I'm going to be sharing with you mistakes that I've made in terms of renting, yes, it pains my heart when I think about how much money I have spent over the years renting, but you know what, I've just realised that we just have to try and move forward and not try and regret, because we can't go back in time and change things. We just have to try and do better going forward. And I definitely now I was renting. So I guess quickly going back, so I went to uni in London, but my parents also lived in London, so I was really I guess desperate to move out of my parents' house and experience the whole uni experience. So even though my parents live in London and I went to university in London, in my first year of university I lived in halls. So I lived in Russell Square, which is like central London, because I just wanted the whole uni experience. So to be honest, I can't even remember how much my my rent was living in university halls when I was in university. But this video is not even about the money that I wasted on uni accommodation, because I do feel like all of us, if we can afford it, we should have that university experience. We should be able to live in halls and experience life. So this is not even about the money that I spent on rental accommodation whilst I was in university. This is the money that I spent on renting after university. So it was about possibly a year or a year and a half after finishing university. So essentially when I finished, so I guess quickly going back again, so I only lived in halls for my first year of university. For my second and final year of university I moved back home and lived with my parents again, and then when I finished university I literally had no money to my name. I remember I had to sign on and go to the job centre every week because I wasn't getting anything. And in case you're interested, I studied law at university. So I studied at a very, I guess, well-known prestigious university. I went to King's College London, but I decided not to go down the whole lawyer training contract route because I just didn't want to become a lawyer. As simple as I didn't want to become a solicitor, I didn't want to become a barrister. What I was interested in was human resources. So after university, I think it was about 6 months after graduating, I did my CIPD foundation qualification. So yeah, so as I said before, I lived on uni halls for 1 year, and then for 2 years I moved back home for my I guess the last 2 years of university. And then for about a year after university, whilst I was looking for jobs, doing an unpaid internship, and then when I got my first proper job after university, I was still living at home and I was trying to save money at home. And to be honest, I would have definitely continued living at home and just saving every single month, but the only issue was I didn't get along with my parents. I was about 22 and I just had a very difficult relationship with my parents, so I decided that what I wanted to do was move out again. I wanted to be by myself. I just felt like I couldn't bear being stuck at home living with my parents, because my parents are very traditional. Well, they at the time they were very traditional Nigerian parents. So even though I was like 22, possibly even 23 years old, I had a curfew. Like, they didn't like me coming home later than 11 p.m. and if I came back later than 11 p.m. it would be a whole drama, and I just felt like I can't be suffocating anymore, being treated like a child. I just couldn't do it anymore, so I decided to move out, and what I decided to do at that point in time was to rent a room. So I decided to house share, essentially. So I remember the first house that I moved to was in Stratford, so in East London, and the rent there was probably about £450 per calendar month, and that included bills. And I believe I lived in that house for possibly maybe a year, maybe, I'm not too sure about dates, but that was the first ever house that I moved to. And then the second house I moved to was another house share, and that was in Enfield, so in Middlesex, and I moved because there were problems with the first house. We ended up having rats or mice, I don't even know which one it was. We had some kind of rodent infestation, and then we also, the boiler stopped working, so I remember I had to end up showering every day. During the week I was able to shower at work because my workplace had shower facilities, but at the weekend I had to go to the Olympic Stadium to their swimming pool and shower using their swimming pools on the weekend. So it was just a whole complete mess. So I ended up moving from that place. I moved to Enfield, and I was at my Enfield house sharing again, probably for about maybe a year and a half to 2 years, I'm not quite sure. The rent was more expensive at that house because it was actually an ensuite room that I was able to get. So I believe the rent was about maybe £525 a month. Or yeah, I think it was 520 or even £550 a month, I think it was. And that house was amazing. It was massive. The lady had converted it into a 6-bedroom house, but we all had ensuite rooms, so there was no shared bathroom facilities. The garden was absolutely massive, and she just redid the house. She did up the house really, really well, so it was a really modern, beautiful looking home. My room was pretty small, to be honest, but that was neither here nor there. The house was amazing. It was a really good location to work. And then I remember the final house that I moved to was a house in Edmonton, so that's North London, and I lived in that house for probably 2 years or so, and then my rent was the same. So I remember my rent was £550 per calendar month, and again, this is still inclusive of bills. And again, this the room that I was renting in Edmonton was also an ensuite room because it was the same landlord. She was just a property investor, so she had multiple houses around London and the outskirts, so I was able to move to one of her houses in Edmonton because it was a better commute for one of the jobs that I had. So in essence, I have lived in, I believe it's been 3 different houses in and around London, essentially, always renting and paying from about £450 to £550 per calendar month, inclusive of bills. Now, in total, I lived out, I believe it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6, maybe 6 to 6.5 years in total. I was living renting, and this was quite painful, but I had to do a rough calculation of how much I have spent renting for about 6 to 6.5 years. And when I look at this figure on my phone, my heart almost breaks, because the stage that I am at now in life is I'm saving up for a mortgage deposit. The reason why I have now moved back home is because I realised that the quickest way to save up for a mortgage deposit is to really reduce my monthly expenditure as much as possible. And for me, that just meant, biting my tongue and moving back home. So I moved back home about 1.5 years ago. But before I go into that, just going back to the amount of money I have personally spent approximately renting for about 6 to 6.5 years, I totaled it, and it has roughly been about 36 grand. I don't know if you can see it on my phone, but according to my rough calculations, I have spent about 36 grand over roughly 6 to 6.5 years on rent. We all need a moment of silence to just digest that. So yes, let me just take a moment of silence before I have a heart attack. The thing is, I feel like the only thing I could do is just laugh, because I don't want to cry. Imagine having an extra 36 grand in my bank account. But that's the thing about life, there's no point sitting back and regretting. We just have to try and do the best with the money that we have now and the knowledge that we have now. Of course, if I still had that 36 grand in my bank account, I wouldn't even need to be, still living in my parents' house at 30 years old, trying to save up for a mortgage deposit. That there is my mortgage deposit, or that there is the bulk of my mortgage deposit. Yes, that is the reason why, just looking at that figure, that is the reason why I kinda regret having spent money on renting, because at the end of it, I have nothing to show for that 36 grand. I have no property to show for that 36 grand. It's painful, and if I could go back in time and do it all again, would I change it? I'm not sure, because again, the reason why I initially moved out of my parents' house is because I didn't get along with my parents, and I felt like I just couldn't do this anymore and I needed my own space. So at that moment in time, I felt like I had no choice, like I had to move out. But if I had a very sweet, loving relationship with my parents back then, if I could go back in time, I definitely would have stayed at home and not moved out. But I guess when I think about my own personal circumstances, I honestly just didn't feel like I could stay another month living at home, and that's why I moved out. And when I moved out, my relationship with my parents improved so much. Like today, my relationship with my parents is so much better. Even now that I am now living back home again, it is nothing like how our relationship was 7 years ago, like nothing like it. So I do feel like even if I could turn back the hands of time, I probably would still move out and spend those 6 or 6.5 years renting, and I guess giving away that 36 grand. But if I'm giving advice to anyone else, if you are currently considering renting, or if you've already moved out of your parents' house and you're just spending monthly, money every month on rent, and you're considering, like, where's my life going? How am I going to be able to get on a property ladder? How am I going to be able to afford that mortgage deposit? If you're in that kind of space, I personally would recommend strongly considering moving back home if you can, if it makes sense for you work-wise. So if your parents don't live too far away from work, I think it's a no-brainer to move back home. For example, my parents live I now live about 25-minute walk away from work. I now walk to work, compared to having to take a train to work and having an hour's commute there and back, so like a 2-hour per day commute when I was living in Edmonton. And that was actually one of the reasons why I moved back home, not only to save for my mortgage deposit, but also just to reduce my commute time, because living here, it's so easy to get to work compared to before. So yeah, so think about, you know, the distance of your parents' house to work, and let that be a factor. Factor that in when you're thinking about moving back home. Also, think about how quickly you want to get on the property ladder. For me, I was just getting tired of not having a house to call my own. I was tired of house sharing and having housemates that would just leave the kitchen dirty. Thank God thank God for the most of those 6 years I had an ensuite, so I didn't have to bear the pain of horrible skid marks or whatever else people see in the toilet when they're house sharing. I always had my own shower, toilets. I never had to experience that, but just the whole fact of, yeah, the house sharing thing was just getting tedious. And also landlords as well can be so draining. My landlord, all of my landlords that I had, they ended up just getting really complacent towards the end of my contracts and not really fixing things in the house that needed fixing. We ended up having ceiling leaks. There ended up being mice in 2 of the accommodations I was living in, and the whole thing just got really onerous. So I guess I don't want to make this video too long, but in summary, I kind of wish that I hadn't spent 36 grand renting, because that is a lot of money, and adding that to any mortgage deposit will make a massive difference to the type of house you can get, or even just the type of mortgage you can get. So the amount of money that I have spent on renting pains my heart, but if I could go back and do it all again, I probably would still move out and still spend, you know, money renting for 6 years, just because me personally, the reason why I moved out was because I felt like I was being suffocated living with my parents. I felt like I had no option but to move out. But if you don't have anything pressing or burning like that is kind of like forcing you to move out of your parents' house, I strongly suggest you stay and you save your money every month, and you just try and bear your parents until you saved enough to move out and get your own house. And again, it's not even, for me, I guess renting my own flat or apartment isn't even an option, because I am so dead serious now on saving up for my mortgage deposit. I am really trying to limit my expenditures as much as possible. So I guess, yeah, we all have life lessons. We all need to live life and enjoy the moment, yes, but we also need to think about the future and plan for the future. And when I was like 22 years old, when I was just moving out of my parents' house, I wasn't thinking about, in 5 years time, where do I want to be? In 10 years time, where do I see myself? I always have wanted to own my own house. I've always had that desire. But the mistake that I made was not thinking about, okay, what are the steps necessary to actually acquire my own property? What do I actually need to do to get my own house? I just kind of felt like, I just kind of thought that it would somehow happen, because I thought it happens to everyone. And I guess going back in time, I should have planned more and actually thought more, made it more tangible in terms of, okay, I may be renting now, but I want to have and own my own place in future. What do I actually need to do to achieve that? And if I just took a step back and thought about, or realised that I need to be saving X amount of money each month for X amount of years to save up enough for mortgage deposit. If I had realised that and thought about that sooner, I probably would have moved back home a lot sooner. But you know what, such is life. We make mistakes, we hopefully learn from them, and then we do better going forwards. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. I moved back home into my parents' house, into this lovely room, the room that I grew up in March of 2018, and I'm currently saving up for my mortgage deposit with my partner. And by God's grace, by the end of this year, we will have moved into our home. But yeah, that in a nutshell is the reason why I I detest renting, because you just don't have any property to show for it at the end of your agreement, at the end of your contract. And it's just, when you think about all that money, and if you just put that into a mortgage, into getting your deposit, into buying a house, that money can take you far. So please, if you can, please try and stay living at home for as long as possible, and use the money that you would have spent on renting on getting your own house. That is my advice. I hope you found this video helpful. I will continue to do a lot more adulting videos, so yeah, subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more adulting videos. And again, please follow my Instagram account because I post a lot more on there also. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if you've got any comments, questions down below in the comment section, and I will see you soon in my next video. Take care and God bless.